My name is Melanie, and for my police systems research project, I decided to go with Guardians versus Soldiers. So we did cover this in class, but basically it is a role that officers have to take. Either sometimes they're guardians, sometimes they're soldiers, and we're going to be going over the challenges of those two, policing that way, and a couple other things. So, the soldier versus the guardian approach. Police officers have to embody two contrasting roles. Like I said, the guardian is someone that prioritizes community, safety, and trust. So this looks like officers going to schools and community events and possibly even churches where a lot of the community is together for periods of time and is a constant thing throughout the week. And the soldier aspect is someone a more aggressive, militarized approach. So that is when you see um officers making arrests or pulling someone over, traffic stops, things like that, or even during protests, we see a lot of just riots and protests get out of hands. So that is when they have to take the the soldier approach. And that can cause problems within communities because it is common for people, especially, I want to say, people of color and low income families that have more negative experiences with law enforcement to see the Guardian's approach as more just direct, aggressive, and it pushes the community away from officers and wanting to interact with them. So instead of seeing, oh, the officers are here in our neighborhood, they're more skeptical about it. They don't want them there. They don't want to see law enforcement involved in their communities. But compared, if we take more of a guardian approach, it's easier for, well, we're getting to know this officer. He comes around. He goes to church with us. Or like he leads events, or he shows up like or walks my kid to school, things like that, where it's like they're involved in the community. It's easier to gain the trust of the public. All right, for the historical context of policing, in the 1800s, we see it was the modern policing era with it was more community-based models focusing on public safety and order. So it was more just keeping the order, keeping the peace, nothing too crazy. And then in the late 1900s, we see the rise of community policing, which emphasized that relationship that we're speaking about with guardians and the trust between police and communities. It made a huge shift from enforcement, so just enforcing the law, to now building community and guardianship. And post 9/11, that was a huge change for policing because of the safety issues. And so now they increase militarization of police forces due to national security concerns. So that led to the adoption of military tactics. And now, present day, as we saw with previous protests, whether it doesn't matter the the action that caused that protest, but for example, like George Floyd, that was something where it was police brutality. It pushed the progress that police had made in those years. It pushed it further back because now police does something, obviously wrong, and that pushes community away from trusting law enforcement, trusting the departments that are supposed to be protecting the community that they're working for. So right now in present day, I think that there's that shift finally happening where people don't see law enforcement as so much of a threat anymore like they did back in like 2020 or 2022, or I mean, sorry, 2021, where the George Floyd incident happened, and then even previously other accidents that we've seen of just certain people in law enforcement that aren't doing their job ethically, morally, even according to policy. So, but now we see law enforcement and just the community. It's all kind of it's not opposing as much. They're not opposing sides anymore. Okay, so these are challenges police officers face. So first, community policing. Growing up in a Hispanic area and Hispanic household, it is very common for us to see, especially with the whole immigration raids going on right now. It's hard to see police like on our side, even though that is a federal issue. We still, any officer, anything, we see it as like they are against us. So it's a lot of people are not informed in the difference between federal and um state the federal and state, and they don't know how it polices differently. But for community policing, law enforcement is constantly under pressure to meet the public expectations, provide resources, and adapt to the unique needs of the community. So, for example, I I lived in Riverside for a long time, and it was hard because the sheriff department there, a lot of their officers did speak Spanish, or maybe they didn't, but they don't speak to you in Spanish. So when you have a community that is mostly Hispanic people, you expect the officers who are supposed to represent us to also speak Spanish, or at least trying to communicate with you in a effective way. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. So they need to adapt to the needs of the community. So I think I'm a firm believer in that police officers should represent the community they are working for. And it's unfortunate if you don't speak that language. I think they still need to, if they are serving the public, they need to take those steps to actually serve the public and understand them. Another issue we have is safety. Officers face lots of issues, lots of dangers in the line of work, like gun violence, traffic accidents, mental health, fatigue. All these things severely affect police officers. We've seen in this class the past a month and a half, all the accidents that have happened with the police departments, like only a couple, like 50 miles from us or something. So it's really tragic, and a lot of that is like traffic accidents or gun violence, and mental health and fatigue are a real thing as well that drains the officers and the people we have protecting our community. So that's another challenge they face. Um, and I'd also say for the police officers that are Christian or religious or have follow any faith, it is really hard to do that because there are a lot of police departments that are just more corrupt. They don't necessarily believe in I think the good of the public. They are just, I think they just let power take control of them. So for people who are faithful, it's important to remain faithful during hard times, like the police departments that we've seen that have lost, all the police departments that have seen have lost their officers recently. And just make sure that as a police officer, your actions are reflecting the God's goodness. So now we have the federal and state government. So for court structures and procedures, here for the federal court structure, we have the district courts. Those are federal trials where cases begin. And then we have the courts of appeal, which is the review decisions from district courts. And the U.S. Supreme Court, it's the highest court. It has like the final authority on federal law and constitutional issues. And then for the court procedures, there's investigations, arrests, discovery, pre-trial motions, plea bargaining, verdict, sentencing, and appeals. Similar to our regular state courts, but they deal with different issues. Now we have the federal level of government involving criminal investigation and law enforcement. So if the criminal investigation and law enforcement, they're conducted by agencies such as the FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and DHS. These agencies, they gather evidence, interview witnesses, conduct surveillance, and execute search and arrest warrants. They also have investigators who work with U.S. attorneys to determine charges, and then they have law enforcement interacts with courts by submitting evidence, testifying, and enforcing court orders. So law enforcement plays very big role in federal cases because they are there. They have to testify, like they said, and court orders, submitting the evidence that they have collected. And then for federal corrections, we have they're managed by the Bureau of Prison. They include minimum to maximum security federal prisons. They provide inmate programs, and then they oversee reentry through supervised release and halfway houses. All right. Now, some issues in criminal justice at the federal and state, local, and like the local level. So, like theoretical issues would be federalism creates overlapping authority between agencies, raising debates about jurisdiction and the proper distribution of power. And then there's also community policing theory, which emphasizes, like we said, building trust within the local level. And then it contrasts with federal models that are just focused on national security. So that's why I think it's so important that people understand that things like ICE raids are not in the control of the police department within their area. That is a federal issue. And the practical issues are coordination challenges between federal agencies and state police, local departments during multi-jurisdiction cases. And there's differences in training, resource, technology that lead to unequal enforcement capacity. So, like we saw in Newsom, you can't wear officers can't wear gaiters or masks anymore, and DHS is not listening to that because they're a federal agency. They do not have to abide by some state laws. And then we have courts and corrections. That is, in corrections, there's tensions between punishment and rehabilitation shape policies. Nationally, the federal prisons maintain standardized systems, while stable and local facilities vary widely in resources and conditions. And then the court system, state and local courts struggle with heavy caseloads and reliance on plea bargaining, while federal courts handle fewer but more complex cases. And why faith is so important for law enforcement, it's the importance is trusting in God's plan, as in, yeah, so I'm sorry, as an officer, it's critical to trust in God's plan. The power and the authority they are given, it often shifts an officer's focus from fulfilling God's purpose to pursuing their worldly desires, just letting power take over them, letting that greed take them. And there's lots of approaches to policing, and some reflect God's goodness while others do the complete opposite. And we've seen that with a lot of officers who act unlawfully, unethically, ungodly in all ways. And I think that's why it's important that people are constant in their prayer and in their belief, and just turning to God when they are stuck in a situation, and always having our Father be our firm foundation. And for police systems, that refers to the organized body of officers responsible for maintaining public order, enforcing laws, and preventing and investigating crimes. And so something that would be like the city, the county, federal, and state level, so like FBI, DEA. And then we have any devices supporting law enforcement, like body cameras or anything of that sort, any other police systems. And that concludes my presentation. I hope this was helpful, informational, and yeah, thank you.